Hi there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. This is the card that we are going to be creating today and it has some pretty cool dimension to it. I'm going to start off with this stamp set here. Now this stamp set is kind of what started it all. It's from a store called Alinacrafts on Aliexpress and they have all original designs there. So I'm going to start off with a piece of Tim Holtz watercolor paper in my MISTI. You don't necessarily need a stamping platform for this, but it can help, I guess, because it's such a large stamp that you are stamping. Now this stamp is pretty big, as you can see, and it actually is wider than my 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece of paper. So it's probably around 5 3/4 inches wide here. I'm just going to put the lid down of my MISTI and pick it up. And before I forget here, I'm going to use my anti-static powder tool just to drop a bit of powder down. And I just have to unscrew the lid because mine never works through the actual applicator system. But I am going to stamp it out in some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Now my ink pad is actually a bit dry here and I end up re-inking it later on, but that is one of the great things about I guess using a stamping platform is that you can just keep going over until you kind of get the image that you were after. So before that dries, I'm just going to put some clear embossing powder. This one happens to be WOW, but anything will work fine, on top of the image, and then I am just going to pop it aside for a minute. Then I'm going to do the process all over again. Now this one doesn't have to be perfect, and you'll notice I really don't have it perfect. So I'm just doing exactly the same thing as I said. Now something that I have seen that when I saw this stamp set used by other people, I saw that others have the stamp set turned up the other way. So I'm not sure if I have it upside down or they have it upside down, but either way it kind of looks fine to me. But when I saw it, I guess I just naturally thought to put it this way, but who knows, it could go either way. Just popping the embossing powder back in the jar, and then I'm going to heat set these. Now this is the one that is not so perfect, so you can see it's kind of got a torn edge. It's just on a scrap piece of paper, and even the stamping isn't perfect. And this one here is the one that is going to be actually part of my card front, so this one is the nice complete image. Then after this we're going to move on to colouring in the image. There are so many things that you could use to colour these in, but for today I have chosen to use my zigs. And again, I'm going to skip through lots of my colouring because I am just not the person to watch. I have just gone over the leaves in one whole colour, and then in a minute I will come back in with a slightly darker shade and kind of do a little bit in the top and the bottom and maybe through some of the veins and kind of blend it out a little bit. I've said it before and I'll say it again, this is not my forte, so I just kind of do my best and it is what it is. So you can see I'm just kind of blending it out a little bit and it just makes it kind of not quite so plain. You can kind of see now those right hand leaves in comparison to the left hand leaves. Hopefully, yeah, it just brings them to life a little bit more. And then with the flowers, I am almost as basic with my colouring. I wanted to keep the flowers kind of the orangey yellows. I didn't want to have like too many different coloured roses, so I'm basically going to, this one here I kind of used a medium yellow, and then I come back with a lighter yellow and kind of blend it out. Although I found that that was not really enough contrast for my liking. So I kind of come back in and I play with the orange marker. I've done this before where even though I'm using the orange marker, I don't necessarily want it to look orange, so to speak. I'm just using it so that it gives me kind of a darker yellow. So what I'm doing is I'm actually just touching the yellow pen to the tip of the orange marker, and that kind of gets me enough color to make it a little more interesting, I guess. But as I said, I'm not one to follow. And then when I go move on to the kind of buds over to the left here, I end up going slightly darker and slightly more orange. So you can see I'm using quite a bit of orange down the bottom, and then I just blend it out using that kind of mid yellow. And exactly the same with the one behind it. And then the one on the right, the rose on the right, I was going to do the same, but then I thought I just wanted it to be a slightly different shade. So I have gone with the orange, and I start with the light yellow here, but I move on to the kind of medium yellow just because I felt like it wasn't quite dark enough. So yeah, I'm just kind of doing my best, and not realistic at all, just it is what it is. I'm just sort of happy colouring away, and it ends up being quite a lot darker than the middle rows, which is good. It just gives a little bit different. So then the last little couple of touch-ups, I need to colour in some of the stems of the roses, and then there's also that really kind of fine border around the little plaque at the front. So I have the black in my zig, and I'm just using a blender pen to touch it to the nib of the black so that I can kind of get just a really light grey, just a little bit of colour. And then here is the second one, which is not kind of complete or perfect. It's just on a scrap piece. And I am just choosing some petals to colour in that I will cut out. There's no rhyme or reason to the ones that I'm choosing. I'm just choosing ones that I think will work. And I am trying to colour them similar to what I've coloured the other panel. Doesn't have to be exactly the same. So as well as choosing some petals, I am going to choose a couple of leaves, and again, just doing exactly the same thing with the colouring. I think I end up cutting out about 6 or so little bits and pieces here. So after this, because of a couple of interruptions, my filming is not great and my footage is not great, and I've lost a lot. But anyhow, you'll get the gist of it. So I cut out all of these little pieces on here, and I also end up cutting out on the main panel the lower half of my image. Now I just went from one side of the page to the other, and I fussy cut underneath. You'll also notice that I have stamped a sentiment there. That is from a really lovely sentiment stamp set that is from Alinacrafts as well, and I will link that down below in case you are interested. It's a gorgeous stamp set that I think I showed in my Alinacrafts haul video. As a finishing touch, you should always go around your fussy cut images with with a black kind of marker pen, and for a little bit of effort, it just makes such a difference. Next up, I have a little bit of white fun foam. I get my fun foam from Aliexpress as well. And I'm just going to draw around the outside of my image with a pencil, and then again just use my scissors to kind of cut around this. You could also use foam dots or foam squares or foam tape or anything that you have to pop this up. It doesn't really matter. I was just using the fun foam, and it saved me kind of going in all those little details because I had used my pencil to trace it. I'm adding a little bit of liquid glue to the back, and then I just have that gap up the top because I didn't plan very well. So I'm just going to add a couple of tiny wee bits of my scrap foam and liquid glue those up the top too to fill in that and just keep it nice and stable. So as I said, just kind of getting the final touches on the card now, and I'm going to glue that whole panel onto a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base, which is made of 110-pound Nina Solar white paper, and just line it all up so that the bottom is kind of floating. And then I have those extra pieces that we did earlier that I am going to pop up. So I'm just putting them on top of where they were to go originally. And then I'm just going to use these little foam squares, which again are from Aliexpress, and put on as many as I kind of can to keep it really stable, and then take off the release paper and pop them straight on top of where they would go. Now, from this point of view, you kind of can't see a lot, to be honest, but at the end of the card, I hope you appreciate when I kind of turn it, you can see this absolutely beautiful dimension, and I love this look to cards. I love popping up some petals on the flowers. It's one of my favorite things to do. And it's quite good to just choose a couple, and then they kind of become the focus instead of doing popping up the whole flower. I mean, you can do either, but yeah, this is just what I chose to do for this one. And you'll see in just a second when I kind of turn the card, you can see what it really looks like from the side. Looks quite cool. And then, as I said, we've just got one very last little thing to do. I have these little droplets that I've been playing with recently, and I'm just going to put a couple of yellow ones and a couple of clear ones. They're kind of sort of semi-transparent drops, and so I'm just going to add a couple here and there and kind of had a little bit of a play around with where I want to put them, but I settle and I'm just going to use some liquid glue to adhere these down. Anyway, that is pretty much my card for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you've been inspired to try something similar for yourself. Thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. If you feel like it, give me a thumbs up and maybe share this video around, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.